Today is maintenance day for the old Duramax, but this is not an ordinary maintenance day because we have oil pan gasket, fuel filter, oil filter, transmission filter, little PPE, fuel filter bleeder screw, and the PPE tie rods. These things are beast-like. Those are massive. The reason for this is that shortly after I bought the truck, I've only owned this truck for about 4 or 5 months. Shortly afterwards, I got to inspecting it closer and I discovered a leak here at the oil pan. So I have the pleasure of taking the pan off and replacing the gasket, but that's okay. It needs an oil change anyway, so I'm just going to do like a really good oil change. So I'll get to drain 100% of the oil out, change the gasket, get the new stuff in, and there's everything all painted up. So far the new brake rotors and pads have been working great. I got them things heated up really well after I replaced them last week. They were hot and absolutely no vibration, so I got them bedded in good and no problems since then. Well, the neighbor stopped by. That's kind of cool. Wants me to do a job. That's even better. What? I don't think it has to be that tight. Okay, all the blood from the truck has been drained. I got some 10 mil bolts here, and wow, they are not tight at all. I wonder what the torque spec is on these, because it doesn't seem like it's torqued. Oh wow, look at that one. How are you supposed to get that bolt out? Wow, that sucks. You gotta loosen that. Alright, all the bolts are out. 2 of the corners had nuts on them. This one and that one over there had a nut holding the pan on. Had to remove the sensor. Had to back this bolt out a little bit on the transmission housing. Right here, 15 mil, backed it out a little bit. to get this bolt. So I assume we need a putty knife now to get in there and pry that thing off, because it's quite obvious that this has been worked on before, because there's some gasket sealant right there. So let's go ahead and pop it off. Alright, so it wasn't as bad as what I thought. So I got the screwdriver started in this corner right by this stud. I got it started in here and then just pried it right off. Oh, I gotta take that cross member off. Probably the pickup tube is in the way as well, I would imagine. That cross member has to come out. Okay, let's take the cross member off. Alright, cross member is loosened. I took off these two bolts. I left one bolt in on the other side, that way the thing can pivot. And what was this? 18 mil for the cross member bolt. Well, that's got a ways to go. There we go. Holy jumping. Cross member has to come out. Now, the even more exciting thing is what the heck's in the bottom of the pan. Oh, it doesn't look that bad. Yeah. Okay, I expected a lot worse than that. All the advertisements on the internet about the oil pan was, oh, there's almost 3/4 of a quart of oil left when you do an oil change. And as you can see, that is not 3/4 of a quart of oil. Let's find out. So here's a 1 quart bottle. Let's find out how much is in there. Oops. Okay, so that's it. It's empty. And what do we have? For 12, so just over 12 ounces. Just a tick over 12 ounces. Less than half a quart. Less than half a quart. Okay, so there you go. There's the true story. There's the inside of a Duramax. How awesome is that? Now I'll clean up this outside ring, the mating surface, and get her put back together. Okay, all clean. I'll go ahead and degrease it. I'll use a little bit of brake cleaner on a rag and then wipe around that edge. And then we'll get the new gasket put on and bolt the pan back up. Day 2, put the pan on. Man, I tell you what, this is more than I bargained for. So apparently GM does not use a gasket on the pans from the factory. They use a GM sealant. So instead of using the gasket that I got, I went ahead and purchased some of the oh man, the black sealant Permatex, the Permatex black gasket maker stuff, and I put that on. I cleaned all this up really well, used some brake cleaner and cleaned the mating surfaces up on the pan and the upper pan. Got them all nice and clean, and then I put the sealant on the pan portion all the way around all the bolt holes, brought it in here, stuck it up and got it bolted. And you're not supposed to torque it until an hour or so after you put the pan up, and you just snug the bolts up so that the sealant has to cure for a little bit. And then after about an hour, you can go ahead and torque them to 89 inch-pounds. That's factory spec. In the sequence that they show, you start in the center, this side, go over there, there. There's a certain sequence, you have to tighten them. So I'll do that at the appropriate time. And I got the cross member back in. I got to tighten the bolts up yet. These are 76 foot-pounds for the cross member bolts. And right now, there's the old transmission filter. I'm getting ready to put the new transmission filter in. And here is the location for the filter. This is a magnet that is, you know, it's on there from factory. So you clean the magnet off and you clean all the threads off here, clean it up. I was a little surprised by how dirty that magnet was. It had some good particles on it. But anyway, here is the new filter. Same. So same filter. Put a little bit of fluid on there. And then we'll go ahead and put this on. And that thing was, the old one was tight. Whoever put that thing on did not want it to come off. That is for sure. So that's that. We'll go ahead and get the little strappy do. Oops. Okay, we'll call that good. So that's done. And then in here, I went ahead and installed a new bleeder valve, or a bleeder screw right there, PPE bleeder screw. The factory one is plastic, and it looked like it was already kind of chewed up and beat up a little bit. So I went ahead and replaced it with that one from PPE. That one's aluminum. This is the factory one. It's a little chewed up. I didn't do that. I gotta tell you, man, I'm a little disappointed in this Duramax. I'm all about Chevy. I love Chevys, but this Duramax is slightly disappointing. What I learned was there are two pieces to this oil pan. What I mean by that is there's an oil, there's a lower oil pan, and then up here there's an upper oil pan. This upper one only comes out if you take the transmission out. Apparently there's a flywheel or a balance wheel or whatever it's called in the way of two bolts that are up inside here that hold that upper pan on. So after doing this oil pan gasket thing, I think it's the upper pan that's leaking because of all the crud that is way up here on top that I can scoop out. Look at that. So this is where the lower oil pan ends. This is the top of the lower oil pan, and this ledge up here is the upper, and I can just scoop out all that gunk. So I think I did all this for nothing other than just to have fun. So that is a bit disappointing, and apparently this is a very common issue on the Duramax. LMM, LML, like this one. I don't know if the LBZ has the same issue, but this one certainly does. And if I get my flashlight, there you can see all the crud on top, and you can see all my Permatex sealant sticking out there too. But all that oil on top leads me to believe that it's the upper pan that's leaking, not the lower. So that's a bit of a bummer, but I learned a lot. And here's the new fuel filter installed with the sensor put back in. Of course, the drain valve for the water, if any gets in there. And there you can see the bleeder screw again. So that was everything I wanted to do. Transmission, oil, fuel, and the gasket. Now I just have to wait. You're supposed to wait 24 hours before you put the oil in. Got oil sitting right there. So, oh yeah, and the tie rods. I gotta put those on. It's amazing what you learn whenever you do something. So anyway, we'll keep working on it. All right, we're back. Now we're in the process of torquing all the little bolts. And here is the diagram of the torque sequence. And take note of all the big humps and the dips. Wow, does that focus? Oh well. And a good reference is this corner, this one right here, and this one right here. Those two spots have the nuts that go on, vice the bolts that you put in. So just for reference. And the oil pan, or the drain plug is over here as well. So that's for reference. So I had the phone set up in the same orientation as I am laying and looking at the pan. So I have 8 of the 18 bolts already torqued to 89 inch-pounds. So I'll go ahead and finish the rest of them. All right, 8. Yeah. All right, 8. 9 is the drain plug. Ten is back here by the front diff. So I'm using a little baby 1/4 inch socket set, and it seems to be working way better than my 3/8 that I started with. And number 10 needed a deep well because my little extension wasn't long enough. That's all I have right there is that little extension. Number 11 might need it as well. All these in the back might need it. So 10, 11 is up on the hump. Is back here, just past the corner. And 13 is over here. And 14 is up here. Is the neighbor. I thought I did this one already. Nope. $15, $16, $17's right beside it. $16, $17, and $18. All right, let's double check. There we go. All the bolts torqued. All up in there. So that one's number one right there. That's number one bolt. And that one, when I was taking everything apart, that one was the loosest. That was just barely, I would say, beyond finger tight. And several of these over here on this side were they were loose. So I don't know, maybe it's not the top oil pan, but it sure felt like it. So again, there's my reference, and we're all done except for the tie rods and putting in the fresh oil. All right, time to do something we ain't never done before. It's time to take the tie rods off and put the new heavy duty PPE ones on. And I'm just gonna time lapse this because I have no idea what I'm doing. It's not that difficult from what I've seen. Bolt here, a bolt there, measure, and then reinstall. And now for the obligatory side-by-side comparison of the stock to the PPE tie rod. Seeing it on YouTube is completely different than seeing it in real life, because the difference in these two tie rods, that is just, it's almost appalling. It is almost appalling that they would make a truck, a heavy duty, an HD truck, with an obvious inadequate design. Is this overkill for me? Yeah, a little bit. But come on, man, look at that. But the good news is this ball and socket is beautiful. There's no play in that whatsoever. I'll cut this end open and see what that looks like here in a little bit. But for now, I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing installed. So I gotta measure the length from the grease fitting to the end here, to the end right here, and make these the same. So it's not that much different. We'll go ahead and get her measured up. According to my tape measure, from the grease fitting over to the inside of the tie rod, or where it connects to the center link, is 17 and 3/16 just heavy, and that's holding on one. So that's our measurement. So we'll go ahead and make this tie rod the same and get her installed. I found that when tightening the jam nut, as I tightened it, I lost a little bit of length on the tie rod, almost 1/8 of an inch. So what I did was I made the length, I unloosened the jam nut, made the length almost 1/8 inch longer, retightened it, and it was just about spot on. So next, the instructions say to apply red thread locker to the inner tie rod and then screw it in. I think the sway bar length might be in the way. Definitely in the way. Oops. Instructions say to torque it to 76 foot-pounds. So that's what we'll do. There. That's torque to spec. Whew. So let's let the jack down slowly. There it is. Torque to 76. What is it? 76? 48 pound-feet. 48 pound-feet. Oh, and these joints are dry. This joint and this joint are both dry, so you got to grease them before you put it in service. Rinse and repeat on the other side. All done. Driver side's on. Everything's tight. I got to get some grease and grease the 4 fittings, and I'm happy to say that there is no play. Look at that. That is tight. So I think I have it on camera before when I started this that there was a little bit of play in there. Now, nothing. Solid. Absolutely rock solid. So, yay. All that effort was worth it. In with the liquid gold. Alright, let's take a quick peek at everything. Oh, I gotta tighten that transmission bolt up. Transmission filter's good. Oil filter, I think it's good. That might have been residual oil from yesterday. Sensor's back in. Drain plug is tight. Alright, I'll get that bolt, that transmission bolt tightened back up. And we'll fire it up. And this is why you always check after you do an oil change. Engine oil with filter. 10 quarts. I put 6 in. Alright, time to fire it up. Everything's tight. That tranny bolt is tight. Drain plug is tight. Sensor's back on. All the filters are tight. We got 10 quarts of oil in. all scared because whenever I started the truck up, something came out from this side, but a whole bunch of water came out of this tube. I'm not sure what that is, but a lot of water came out of there. I thought it was fuel, but it's not. Let's check oil pressure. Looks good. There's not a whole lot of squish out right there. That makes me worry a little bit. Maiden voyage on the new parts and the new oils and everything. So far so good. Oil pressure is about 50 psi, and I can't say that I notice a big difference in the steering. I mean, this is just very light casual driving. Maybe feel like it's a little, just ever so slightly more solid in the steering wheel. Steering feels the same, but I wasn't expecting a drastically different feeling vehicle after just doing the tie rods. I think under different circumstances of driving you would notice those changes. So far so good. So pressure dropped down to about 32, 33 psi, and it still feels like it's driving pretty good. Well, I'm definitely going to get it aligned though. All right, well, we'll call that one good.